age of 3, skating on her backyard rink in Peterborough, Marianne knew that skating would be her life. At the age of 6, she joined the Peterborough Figure Skating Club, working her way up to gold tests. After competing for more than 10 years, she shifted her focus to coaching for the PFSC as well as local area clubs. She always had a desire to play hockey. At that time, there was no organized female hockey for her age group in the city until the Grey Monroe Gremlins came along, coached by Gary Dalladay. This prompted a move from figure skates to hockey skates. A request by Pete's player Dallas Aikens to help improve his skating skills resulted in her being hired by the Petes as their skating coach, which would put her on the path to a very successful career. Marianne went on to work with several OHL, AHL, NHL, Canadian and American university teams, both men's and women's, hockey camps and clinics across Canada, the USA, and even Europe. She has provided individual coaching to many NHL players. She developed her own business, Pro Power Specialized Hockey Skating Camps, holding clinics across Canada and the USA. Marianne has been featured in skating segments on TSN, ESPN, Paul Coffey's Skate Like a Pro video, and was a keynote speaker at the first annual Hockey Skating Symposium in Detroit in 2005. From 1998 to present, she is the hockey skating director and professional coach at Robert Morris University Island Sports Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where she runs hockey skating development programs for every level of player. Marianne Watkins has developed into one of the top hockey skating coaches in the world and continues to make a difference for players and coaches of all levels and ability. Marianne Watkins, thank you so much for joining us on Sports Legends.
You're welcome, and thank you. I kind of sound good with that.
It's quite the impressive resume.
Yeah, it's been a lot of ice time and a lot of great adventures.
And when we do go through your folder, you'll see personalized notes from literally the biggest names in hockey. Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Paul Coffey. When you bring it all back to the PMC, where we are right now, and it all started, that journey for you, when you look at it from afar, how shocking is it?
It is shocking because this is home to me. You know, this is where I grew up. I skated, you know, from the age of 6 on. I spent a lot of time here, and just really never thought about skating being a career or future. It just kind of circumstances and just people I met, and really I guess it all started when, you know, I was coaching figure skating after I was done amateur, and Dallas Aikens, who's now the head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, just asked me to help him with his skating. Next thing I knew, I was hired by Dick Todd to come out with the team, and one door just kept opening another, so it's been a real great journey.
And you're like one of the Wright brothers in terms of hockey development, because skating is now the premier focus for everyone. It didn't used to be. If you could shoot, you could play. Now if you could shoot, that's fine, but can you skate? To see that come along as well with you, how has that been to watch, and do you feel like you were ahead of the curve?
Well, you know, when I had to reflect back, when I got the call from Pat, you know, this does make you reflect back, and you forget, but yeah, exactly. I feel like when I started, the only role model I had was Joan Martin, who was starting here with helping little boy hockey players. And I tried when I got into it, I wanted to go somewhere to learn, to learn more. I knew I had the figure skating background and all the tools of the fundamentals, but I wanted to be able to relate it to the game more, but there was nowhere to go. So just from my childhood and my dad and learning the game from him, I just tried to figure it out myself, and I guess there were no skill development coaches back then, you know, and especially female. So when I did reflect back, I went, yeah, you know, maybe I was a bit of a trailblazer, and my daughters reminded me of that too. But nowadays, everybody and their brother is a specialty coach, whether they're good or bad. It doesn't matter. People are willing to pay for it, you know. So yeah, it feels really good to. Even though so it makes me feel ancient, but yet it makes me feel good.
Well, a couple things off of that. One, your dad was a goalie, right? So skating and goaltending is not synonymous.
Well, he was only a goalie because he had 6 brothers and 1 sister, and they had didn't have the means to buy equipment, so the Sacred Heart Church supplied goalie equipment. So that's probably the only reason he chose to play goal. But my memory is sitting on his knee every Saturday night watching Hockey Night in Canada, and learning the game from him. You know, not only spending time with him, but I'd ask so many questions, and I'd talk about the players, and wanted to learn, you know, the game from just watching, which kids don't do. And like you know, I live in the States now, but they don't watch it enough. You know what I mean? So, but here it was part of our culture, and yeah. So my dad was a big influence. He's the one who actually, you know, with the outdoor rink and taught me how to skate. And was out there every night with the hose in cold winter nights and making sure it was good for my brother and I when we got home from school. And yeah, so he was a big part of my skating life.
I think a ton of people will be hearing that and just reflecting right back to their childhood as well. And I'm doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Now, going along with that, you talked about the other female leaders in hockey specific training, names like Barb Underhill, and obviously they're big with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you kind of hear about it just by being around, listening to players and listening to coaches, everything around the NHL. Is there a tight-knit community of those of you who actually teach it? No?
No, not really. No, you know, the thing is, like, I think we all have our own vision and the way we think it should be done. And so I base everything I teach from my own experience being on the ice with the best and the worst, and just learning and really relating it to the game. Like, the players and coaches, they want you to specifically like take a piece out of their game and, you know, apply that skating to where they're going to use it on the ice. And so we all have our own different philosophies, I guess. And in my old age, I'm getting, like, I guess with confidence, and like, I know that this is going to work because the other stuff doesn't. So I'm more confident, I guess, now than ever with it. But no, I wouldn't say it's a tight-knit community because we all have our own opinions.
All right, well then let's rewind a little bit back to being in the Caravaggio home, watching hockey. And you said your dad used to teach you the game, so now I'm interested. Is there a player that you were pointed to in terms of, you talk about skating all the time. I know it came from roots in figure skating, but was there a player that you were watching when you were a kid and thought that's how you skate?
It's so weird because, like, I loved Eddie Shack because he used to do those twirls, you know, like the 360s before there were 360s. And Yvonne Cornway, I wanted to know why they call him the Road Runner, but I got to meet him actually on the road with TSN, and he is my height, 5'7". He's not very big. He was the nicest gentleman, classy man, and I asked him how, you know, what was the speed, what did he attain it to? And he told me his blades were actually longer, like a speed skating blade, so he got a longer glide to cover more distance. So that was his secret. And then he could switch hands to shoot too. I remember he was showing me that on the ice, like, yeah. So yeah, just all the best skaters. And Derek Sanderson because he was cute. I remember I had a poster in my room.
Yeah, I know the poster. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was always the skaters that I, for some reason, just watched the skating.
Okay, so did that bring you to guys like Guy Lafleur and Bobby Orr? Okay.
Yeah, and I got a Guy Lafleur. It sounds like I'm like, it's hard talking about yourself, right? But I was on the ice with Guy Lafleur, and it was at one of the Gretzky clinics. And this is like, I just think this is an interesting story because we were all just fooling around, and Guy Lafleur hit me with a puck right on my ankle so hard that it made me collapse. The first one down to see if I was okay was Wayne Gretzky, and he was at the other end of the ice in the corner, I think with his back turned. But you know how they said he had, you know, eyes in the back of his, he was the first one down there. And I'm like, where did he come from? But that's his vision. But yeah, I got a bruise from Guy Lafleur. That's my Guy Lafleur story. But that's been the exciting thing about this journey is, like, I've got to meet so many amazing people, and the travels, and like, just, you know, it's just been wonderful when you reflect back, especially for this.
And some things that just make me curious right away. You're interacting with hockey players of every level. Is there a difference in the, I guess, respect for your profession amongst the higher level players versus the lower level players, like the Gretzkys and the Coffeys? Are they more interested?
Well, you know what? In the beginning, it was a little tough. You know, female in a man's. And like, probably through like these 40 years, I've only had maybe a handful of bad experiences where coaches would say, what's she doing here? Or, what's the deal with her? Or, you know what I mean? But I always just let my skates do the talking. And once they see I can most of the time, like, even do it better than they can, then they listen. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the way it's been. And no, like, so again, like Dick Todd and Roger, those were the guys that hired me before there was any kind of skill development. So they knew back then, they were way ahead of their time, especially Roger, right? Like with video and stuff, he knew that there was a place for this in the game, you know, more development for skills. And so I forget where the question was, but see how I'm rambling?
Yeah, well, just about the elite level players and who have more of a focus on those details that you were there a part of.
So the big boys, the pros, they're just like the little boys. You know why? Because they still want you to pat them on the back and say, good job. And they say, was that good? Was that good? And it's the same, really. You know what I mean? It's just the skating's more efficient. And, you know, they're looking for ways to gain the step and all that stuff. But, yeah, the big boys are just like little boys, I think.
Yeah,
that's what I found.
Okay. Yeah, it's a game, so it makes sense.
That's right. And they're very humble. Like, honestly, of all the professional sports, hockey players are, like, the best. They really are.
All right. Now, the tentacles of the Peterborough hockey community reach far. You're a tentacle reaching down to Pennsylvania coming out of this with Roger Nielsen, Dick Todd, and even Gary Green, who's somebody you interacted with. Was it with TSN? Was that?
Yeah, he opened so many. I always said to him, he opened so many doors with TSN, the Gretzky things, Can-Am Hockey Group. We even did a hockey show together. It was on every Saturday morning, a national hockey show. And I always said to him, like, you know, you opened so many doors for me, and he always answered, but you walked through them, you know, which I thought was great. So I guess I did. But yeah, I've had great people along the way help me out and believe in this, and maybe in me too, I guess. So it's been great.
And so many filtered through, again, this building that we're in.
I know, right? I know. Everybody in this, everywhere I travel, especially in Pittsburgh where I live now, they all know Peterborough. That's all I talk about, and Canada. And yeah, I couldn't stop bragging about this. I thought I was humble, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going back home to get my award. And then one coach said, oh, what's the award for? Longevity? I didn't think he meant it in a good way either, because I've been doing it for 100 years. Everyone thinks I'm ready to retire, but as long as these hold up, I'm going to keep it going.
And you do interact, well, on the Robert Morris roster, you'll see players from the OJHL in the area wind up there all the time. I believe there's a player from the Wellington Dukes on the roster right now.
Yeah, they do a lot of recruiting in Canada, especially with the girls team too. Like, a lot of the team are Canadians, but you know, back then too, like, I didn't realize, like, living here, it was just major, junior, and the NHL. You know what I mean? I didn't even know about schools, colleges, universities, scholarships until I got down there and I saw the banners and I went, wow, like, maybe I should have kept up with playing hockey. Maybe I could end up down there with a scholarship, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, there's a lot of avenues, and I know that, the U.S. still think Canada's, they know we have the edge on hockey. They still know that, but they won't admit it. That's why they come up here to recruit all the time.
Now, you talk about the avenues that you went down, and in your form that you filled out for us as well, you listed your greatest accomplishment, and you went over to Europe to do some coaching, but you listed your greatest accomplishment of going back to Italy to reconnect with your family roots. Was that paired with a trip to coach?
No, it's just, you know, when I reflected back, I thought back to my grandfathers who, they left Italy to, you know, better life. It was the time of Mussolini and Hitler, right? So they had to get out. So they knew Italians that had come to Canada. Some had gone to South America. So they came to Peterborough, and I always wondered what I'd be doing in South America, but I sure wouldn't have been skating, right? But thank goodness they came here to Peterborough, and yeah, so I always reflect back to them. But no, that was a separate trip. When my grandfather passed, he was always going to take me back, and so I wanted to go even without him, just to discover all that, because, you know, your heritage means a lot, right? And I think that's where I got my strength and character, and just I admired them, you know, because they had to start a new life for themselves. So yeah, when I reflect back, they gave me a lot, so I had to see where we came from.
Did it give you some courage to go on and take big leaps?
It does. I think about them a lot. Like, they speak up, and They just had a passion for life, and they wanted to learn the culture. My one grandfather would go to the courthouse every day just to learn the law and the language, and because they didn't want to just, they wanted us to learn Italian, but back then it wasn't cool to be foreign in elementary school, so my parents were adamant we learn English. But yeah, like I had a great childhood and a lot of strong role models.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how many brothers?
Just one brother.
Just one brother,
Paul.
okay.
He's older, 4 years. And actually, to give him some credit, he was always pretty mean to me, but he taught me how to compete. Because I used to try to beat him anything we played, ping pong, tennis, golf. And he was quite the athlete himself. And he was, always 6'4". He was always bigger. But no, I could never beat him, but that made me learn how to compete, you know what I mean? And yeah, so I owned that.
Well, yeah, competing with your older brother, it's got to do it. Now, I want to go back to figure skating, and this is something that it seems to be a trend amongst skills skating coaches, is a figure skating background. Even some NHL players like Jeff Skinner, he was a former figure skater, right? What is it about figure skating that really lends itself to being able to function on the hockey rink?
What it is, I think the number one aspect of figure skating that applies is the edge work. Like so I've found that most hockey players that I've ever skated with are weak on their outside edges, because we don't do enough. We're figure skating, and like there's so much edge work that you have to do, and so they're very weak on their outside edges, which affects their skating game. But mainly the right outside edge, because we don't go around the rink that way, we always go this way. That's one reason. But so it's the edges. The edges, they're not strong enough, and that affects them, especially because the game has changed, the skating game, and it's way more efficient now. And we slow down to do too many things. Like we slow down to do a tight turn, we slow down to transition, and instead of using the edges where you don't have to. So that's what I've really tried to stay updated to the game, to what's needed for today's game. But it's the edge work. That's the main reason that the figure skating is an advantage.
There are some things that I see just watching OHL games, and it's hips wide open, feet spread, and striding up the ice. And that was something that I was never taught, and I'm 10 years older than these, or 10, 15 years older than them.
Well, like they're so-called new moves, but that swivel push, like we call it the Crosby push, of course, because we're in Pittsburgh, but I remember when I was with the Oshawa Generals, Eric Lindros used to do that around the circles just to warm up. So here's the other aspect. A player's hips control everything in their skating. That's where your legs start. And the swivel movement is more and more because the game isn't straight anymore, right? So there's all that hip action, but most players still are so tight that they can't, that really limits their range of motion. And so that's it's still not caught up, but the hip movement is really, really important. But that comes with what they're doing off ice, and as they grow, and any injury, like it really causes a lot of injury if there's tightness there because of all the swiveling now.
Now, how close does your profession have to be married to the training to get these guys? Because with these new movements, I understand that cycling is a non-starter for hockey players.
It tightens your hip flexors.
Yeah. I
know, everything's changed. I think the story was Mario used to ride a bike with a cigarette in his mouth. I don't know, way back then, but like Yvonne, they used to smoke between periods, like back in the day. But no, like that's another thing. So all the strength and conditioning coaches that I've worked with each team, that's another kind of separate. Like they all got their own thing, you know what I mean? That's another, there's not too many of them that work together, because they all have their own set way. So anytime I've gone in, especially at a pro level, they kind of look at me like sometimes they go, okay, great, we'll get on that, and other times they're like, yeah, we know that, but I don't know if they're really addressing it, because I see it off ice, or on ice, that there's where the limitations are, and so I don't know how much that's being addressed off ice.
Did you work with somebody like a big name like Gary Roberts at all?
No, Gary was done.
Well, in terms, I know he was
with
in
the strength and
yes.
conditioning. Yeah, I met Gary and all that, but no.
Okay.
And no.
All right. So, your philosophy when you're looking at players skating, do you just instinctively start judging and picking them up and saying you need to do this, and this?
You know, it's funny talking about the physical. You can tell right away their physical restrictions. You know what I mean? Especially if it's in the hips, their range of motion. So you know that's number one to address. And then also, I don't know if this is new, but when players turn, they were taught to lean in, you know? That's totally wrong, because if like a player's 235 pounds now, they need to keep that upper weight over their blades. So when they're turning, they have to counter lean to keep that weight, you know, equal on both edges. You know? So that's another thing. The guys aren't very flexible to shift through their core to get their upper body weight over their edges, stuff like that. And then another thing is they don't finish their push. They don't get that final snap. So I always ask, what are you doing off ice to get, and they jump flat like this, they land flat, so they don't, you know, just little things like that make a big difference.
Oh, that's something I distinctively remember from not figure skating, but power skating, was that kick out actually.
Yeah, to finish.
Wondering why. Yes.
Yeah, if not, your blade flies up and, you know, you just lost a step.
Is there a skater right now that kids should be watching? And I know everybody's body is physiologically different, and it's not always possible to skate the way, you know what, let's just go to Connor McDavid, who is probably the best skater in the NHL.
They each have their own thing, you know what I mean? Because, so Connor McDavid, so we used to joke, what are these linear crossovers? Like, everybody makes up a name now, right?
Yes, they do,
the jab step.
Yeah.
And it's like, what really is that? So we were kidding about these linear crossovers that were named because so he just accelerates straight up the ice using crossovers. It's not laterally, so that's why it's called that. And so, yeah, he's really good at that. Jack Eichel has one of the best straight strides I've ever seen.
And he's really upright as well, right?
Yeah, but his distance, each stride that he takes, he gets 3 other guys' strides, you know what I mean? Because they're so big. So that's straightaway speed. Like, they all got something different. Crosby's maneuverability and all that stuff. Like most of the players now aren't weak at anything. Like, Crosby's a center, but he has a whole backward skating practice he does, because you have to be good at everything now. In the old days, a forward would never practice backward skating, right? But now they got to be good at everything. But each player kind of has their own specialty. And most, like, I used to be able to, like, on one hand go, who are the best skaters in the NHL? Oh, but now it's like there's too many to name, you know?
Another reason I asked that is I mentioned beforehand that I found the Paul Coffey video with you and Ron McLean this morning, actually, and I watched that and I was just skimming through it. And there are a few things that stick out to me, and it was the instinctive hunch that a player would have. And I thought, Wayne Gretzky, he skated hunched over all the time, but he got it done. And then Paul Coffey, you're saying
unorthodox.
Yeah,
know,
it was.
Like, well, I know, but you can't criticize it, right? And Malkin does that, and you know, it's like, yeah, no, they got the job done, you know.
And you were preaching to keep your seat over top of your skates, and that makes me think of Jack Eichel a little bit.
Yeah, because as soon as the butt goes out, then the head drops, and then you're not even in your hips anymore, and it shortens your stride. But yeah, like, see, that's the thing. Like, I have to be careful now. I'm getting more verbal about, because if they've been taught something wrong, it's hard not to say, oh, that's not right. Who taught you that? You know, so you got to watch it. But there is still a lot of people teaching, like, old school stuff, where to jump and run and lift your knees up and, like, you know what I mean? So I'm getting more blunt.
Oh, that's fine. No, it's just, I think we've gone too deep into this, and less about
hockey talk, right? I love hockey talk.
It is fascinating watching that evolve. So, and the role that skating coaches actually play in hockey now, it's almost bigger than anything. I don't think kids would have spent any time really focusing on it. There was, where I grew up in Durham region, you would go to a camp, and her name was Mary. Everybody called her Scary Mary.
Scary Mary. I met Mary. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Everybody was literally frightened to go to this because it was terrible.
Intense, yeah. No. that's the thing. I've tried to make it fun, you know, whatever level. You know, have an adult class, beginner adults, which I give them so much credit for trying hockey at like 50 years old, but we just try to make it fun too. And it is humbling because, you know, I've had a professional football player wanting to learn how to skate, and he came out and he couldn't take a step. You know what I mean? It's really hard to skate. So, you know, like I give a lot of people credit for even trying.
For you, is skating, I know for a lot of people their sport becomes their escape, and yours was seemingly mostly just around coaching. Is there ever a moment where you can just take a stride and stroll up and down the ice and just feel happy out there?
Yeah, I do still, you know, because it's not only that, it's a great way to keep in shape. You know what I mean? You use every muscle in your body. You don't realize it, but yeah, my girlfriend, who I think is coming tonight for the ceremony, I said to her way back when, I got to get a real job, and she goes, "What are you talking about? You get to skate, which you love to do, keeps you in shape. You get to travel. You're meeting all these people. You get to work it around your family. What are you talking about?" You know. So then I realized it was a good thing.
Yeah. I guess the trickle-down effect of your passion for sports into your kids, how prominent has that been?
Well, we have 3 daughters, beautiful daughters. They're all talented. I made them skate when they were little. Used to bring them out on the ice for figure skating, and I was their coach. Then I got them another coach, and they all 3 skated up to me one day and said, "You know, we like this, but we're kind of just doing it for you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm one of those parents forcing my kid to." But they all skated and loved it. But they all have other talents that they've pursued, and they're just amazing.
What was their reaction when you passed on the information that you'd be inducted into the Peterborough District Sports Hall of Fame?
Again, I still remember the day Pat called, and I couldn't contain myself. I told everybody, whoever would listen, bragging. But my daughters were thrilled. And again, tonight's the ceremony. My daughter from Whistler flew in to surprise me, and Gary, and because didn't want to miss this. Means the world to me, and that's actually why this means so much to me, is for them.
What would the reaction have been from your ancestors who came over from Italy and everybody to now see you in a Hall of Fame?
That's a fun question. I don't know. That's a good question, but again, like I've gained so much from them, just the passion and the caring and the just life, you know, like, yeah. That's a really good question. I'll think about that.
We'll revisit that when we get back to the end of this. There is something else we want to get to, and this is, again, your transition from figure skating to hockey, and Gary Dalladay, obviously a huge name in the Hall of Fame here. There are rooms named after him in this building now. Now, he was your first coach, another amazing Peterborough connection for you, but they were called the Gremlins, I believe. Gremlins, okay.
Gremlins, yeah. I can't even
What is a gremlin?
I can't even forget what a gremlin is. It's because some sort of monster or something. I forget.
Okay, well, we'll call it the Gremlins. So your first time playing hockey, you've obviously been watching it your whole life. What was the difference for you in the reaction to skating for, I don't know what the purpose of figure skating necessarily would be, perfection perhaps, versus skating for fun?
Well, the easy part was I could skate. So to put a stick and the equipment on, that was the part to get used to. And I remember the skates, like figure skates, like I used to have my skates drawn, like my foot drawn, so they're so tight. You can feel every joint in your toes. But hockey skates are more open, and I'm like, whoa, and then the rocker. But the skating came easy, so. And I'm probably the only one that could skate backwards that well, so I was on defense. And I picked number 5 because of Denny Potvin. I thought he was great at the time. Did he ever play here?
In Peterborough?
I don't know.
I don't believe so.
But anyway, and I played defense, and it was just a great bunch of girls, and Gary Dalladay made it so much fun. Like, he didn't take it that seriously, but he was a great coach and just respected us as girls, you know what I mean? He was just a hoot.
Yeah. Do you remember your first goal? Can you go back there? No?
No.
Was there ever a goal on defense?
I don't even know. I just remember it was just fun. because figure skating is so intense and the training and, you know, just an individual thing. There's always, you're competing against your, you know, there's always in-house feelings, but the pack of girls we had was just so much fun.
You talk about tight-fitting skates. Again, Paul Coffey, he was famous for that, right?
Yeah, when we did that video, he said, try my skates on. So I wear size 6. He wore size 6, even though his foot, I don't know what his shoe size is, but yeah, they're always 2 sizes smaller. He had the trainer gut them somehow, like, and restitch them, and his laces were never tied, like they're always looped here. Plus, the hollow on his blade, I still don't get this to this day, but he had it rounded this way. Instead of it being grooved, it was this way. And he wanted me to try them, and I'm like, wow, that's... But a lot of players have their thing, you know, when it comes to their equipment and skates, but he was so disciplined. Like when we filmed here at the Memorial Center, it took us 3 days. Every day we had to break for an hour or 2 hours while he trained, because we did it in the summer. He was still playing, so he had to work off ice. He was very disciplined, you know. And he said he was not born that way. He used to say he was naturally born. He said, no, I've worked at this.
Yeah, he was a coach as well, so I'm sure he passed that on to his son who played hockey as well. Now you're doing that with Ron McLean. Like, that's...
He saved us because there was no script. They just put us on the ice and said, okay, just go ahead. And we're like, we didn't even know each other. And we're like, well, what do you want us to do? And just do whatever. There's no script. So Ron stepped in, the professional he is, and he really helped us because, again, I was just new into this. So I'm like, but by the end of the 3rd day, we kind of got it. But I wish we could go back and do it again. Let's go find Paul. We'll do it again now because I'm way more confident. But Ron, and then we had to do voiceovers, and Ron helped me through that. Just a really, really great man.
I saw the letters from Ron McLean as well. This was for you to move to the States?
Yeah, I needed to prove, to get permanent residency in a job, I had to prove I was an alien with extraordinary ability. So I didn't have medals or trophies or, you know what I mean? So I had to get letters and newspaper articles and anything that I'd done previously to prove that so I'm an alien with extraordinary, that I wasn't taking someone else's job.
Was it a tough process?
It took 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's been great. My daughters got their green cards as well. So if they, my one daughter's become a citizen, but she has dual. But eventually I think we're all gonna head back north because maybe you can edit this, but it's Canada's, you know what I'm trying to say?
We don't need to edit anything there. That's fine. We'll just...
we'd rather be in Canada.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Rather be in your home. And you mentioned just coming back here. When was the last time you were back in Canada?
Well, 2 years ago for my mother-in-law's funeral.
Okay.
And then I was just out in Whistler to visit my granddaughters a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't seen them in 2 years. So hopefully the border won't close again.
How tough has that been? I know this is off topic from Sports Hall of Fame induction, but this moment is actually going to bring you guys all back together. How tough has it been these 2 years?
Thank goodness for FaceTime and Zoom and all that, right? Because that's been a savior, but it's just not the same as touching and, you know, being together. When my daughter walked in last night, I couldn't wait to hold her, you know. And then we met up with friends last night, Terry and Lori Boisvert, who have been our best friends, and we just had a blast, you know. And it just feels like home. So great to come back. What triggers sports memories in Peterborough, going back to your youth? When you drive around the town, perhaps today, take a chance to do it. Would there be landmarks that you would go to? Oh, to see, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, King Edward Park, is it still there? Because that's where I first went to skate, and the Civic Arena where it used to be. What's there now?
Blast the room.
Know. Civic Arena.
The bowl? Okay, yes.
The bowl.
Okay, yeah.
Here for sure. Like we drove through East City and there used to be a swimming pool there we used to go to all the time. Our old schools, Sacred Heart and Kenner, and our old houses, and we'll be going to the cemetery tomorrow to visit my parents and Gary's parents, and yeah, it's just great. Like it just feels so good. Thank you to the Hall of Fame.
That's really nice to be able to reflect on that. And what other sports did you play in Peterborough? I know there was.
Oh, well, okay, so that's, yeah, so when I got to high school, and, you know, figure skating was every day, before school, after school. So when I got to high school, I went, you know what, I want to play other sports. So I played volleyball, I was on the team, the basketball team, I even tried cheerleading. Yeah, I was on the board. Like, I wanted to do other things, be a kid, right?
Yeah.
Because it's pretty intense, like any of those individual sports, gymnastics, figure skating. So I did. I played all of that, and I'm glad I did, because if I had just kept with the figure skating, you know, I wouldn't have had all that other journey with the people I met and the team aspects. And yeah, so I'm really glad I branched out in high school.
If you run into somebody that you haven't seen in a long time and they ask you, they don't know what you've been up to, how would you describe your career to them?
Oh, I took skating, and I guess I did something with it, you know, the gift that my mom and dad gave me, and believe it or not, I did something with the only skill I really have other than cooking. I'm a pretty good cook, but I don't know what else I'm good at, so I'll have to find that out in my next chapter, I guess.
How do you describe your career to somebody, and still waiting to find out?
I guess,
Yeah.
you know, well, no, this has been this chapter, right?
Yes,
and,
okay.
So thankful for it, and again, that's why this means so much to me. I want to dedicate this to my family, especially my mom and dad, because they really didn't have the means to even afford for me to skate, and they sent me out west to train, and you know, but they made it happen and supported me the whole time, and just I'm really proud to think that they're looking down and, hey, you know what, she did something with that.
Will they be making an appearance in your speech tonight?
Yeah, but I started. I know we have to keep it brief, 5 minutes or so, Pat said, but I started with 4 pages. I got it down to 1, but now that my daughter showed up, I got to change it again. So I promise to keep it brief. But yeah, this is a dedication to them for sure. Mm-hmm. So
now, when you took this from, like, I know you pointed out that you'd like to talk about how many doors were open, one door leading to another, one door leading to another, but we're going to get into that right after this. But the door that was the biggest one, and you almost call it a cliff, is when you start your own business and you actually take it into something that's going to be full-time. Was that a natural evolution, or did it become one big decision?
No, I think because, so once I started with the Pete's, that was every Monday, and I was with them for 10 years, and Rick Kornacki was the coach of Oshawa, so he had me come on Tuesdays, and Pete's Monday, and so once you get involved,
yeah.
And I know how, are they still rivals? Are they still rivals?
Yeah.
So yeah, used to want me to report back what was going on with each team. But anyway, so once you get involved with, like, you know, a name, oh, she's with the Pete's, then I guess I started teaching lessons here, and camps I got involved with, and so once people know you're doing it, it kind of rolls from there. So I decided to start like clinics, and that's when I started the business, and yeah, just kind of from there got better. But I was still learning, you know what I mean? Remember Jeff Toohey? Is Jeff still here?
Jeff's
Toohey?
around Peterborough.
Well,
you scout with the Florida Panthers now.
Isn't it good for him? But he used to say, you know, I try a drill. He goes, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Do something else. You know, because it's not about perfection, hockey. It's actually about mistakes, and how do you know, get through the mistakes. Excuse me.
And Jeff Toohey is somebody who rose up through the ranks with the Peterborough Petes as well, going from a trainer to a coach to a general manager. I believe Dick Todd took a similar route as well, so they'd probably have some respect for that.
Yeah.
Now we'll go back to the doors, and the first one that you've mentioned was Dallas Aikens.
Just asking me to help him, and I guess it made a difference, and Dick noticed it and said, hey, why don't you, I think he was just trying it out, you know? Why don't you come out every Monday and see who wants to, for extra help. And like the 10 years that I was with the team, couldn't ask for a better 10 years. Chris Pronger, Mike Ricci, Jamie Langenbrunner, Ty Domi, like the list goes on and on. Like, so it's like, wow, I hit the jackpot, because I was learning what it took to get to the next level. And to the next level at that time was just straight to the NHL, right? Because you didn't even think about university or college, but so I was learning, and they were all really good, you know what I mean? Like, they all had respect, and again, I think it was just because I could perform.
Yeah. So you go from there, and I guess it's a natural that you drag each other on, but you're working with all those players, and then on to your next step. Where did you go? Roger. Okay.
Roger, yeah, Roger. He had me come to his camp, his school, and it was at Port Hope Trinity College, and that's when one coach looked at me and he what's she doing here? But Roger, way ahead of his time, he knew it was a good thing to go out there and help these. Even players were like, "What? We got to work on our skate." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They dreaded it, but that's why I've learned to make it fun and use the pucks, take away the pucks when needed, incorporate it in the game. Talk hockey, and then you've got them. But yeah, so Roger, and so I worked at Roger's camps for like 20 years. And then I was so happy to be the first woman to speak at his annual coaches clinic at the 31st and 32nd anniversary, I think, in Windsor. And I was just so proud to do that for him. And yeah, he was just way ahead of his time, and a really nice man.
And keep taking me through the timeline. Now let's lead up to where we are right now.
Gary Green was probably next, and Jacques Martin, had me come to his elite schools in Quebec, and Gary Green, and just all of that with Gary Green. We traveled across Canada with TSN and did coaches clinics, and again got to meet so many people and learned from him, and then that hockey show we did, which was a lot of fun. And I was the featured skating coach. And then again, once you get involved with something, then that's when the Gretzky things came about. So every year they'd have a Coca-Cola Future Stars camp. They'd fly in two kids from each NHL city and pay for them, and they got to skate with Gretzky and have pictures taken. And he'd bring in all the players. I got to skate with John Candy, the actor, and Kurt Russell, and all these celebrities. You know what I mean? It was a lot of fun, but yeah, it was people like that who really believed in the skill development and I guess me, when I think back.
Now, were there moments where you would have coached a player and then tracked their progress to see if they're going to be actually...
all the time, and yeah, they have. You know what, Dan, to tell you the truth, I don't want to leave the ice until I know we've improved in that 50 minutes or whatever I want to make sure that they got something out of that. I guess I could be rich right now if I had made this into a big business, like a lot of skills coaches out there are doing. They go from city to city and for 3 days, out for 3 days, and it's quite a money maker. But no, I just want to make sure each kid has a smile on their face. And what did you get out of this today? Do you think you got better at this? And that's the goal, I guess. Just to
How tangible can a 50-minute session be? How much improvement, or I guess it's awakenings you're looking for in some skaters, but how much can happen in one session?
A lot, yeah. Even when I do private lessons, here, when I went down the States, I went, wait, you want a private lesson? And they'll pay whatever for it. I only do 30-minute lessons for private because I can do a lot in 30 minutes, and I don't want to overload them. And we just take one aspect out of their skating game, whatever position they play, and see if we can bring it up to date to today's game. Because a lot of the older players are sort of out of date with it.
So what it's becoming to me is, hockey is unaffordable, has been unaffordable for a long time, actually even more so in the US than it is in Canada. Now, all these different money makers that you mentioned, different academies popping up all over the place with all the different vernaculars that you mentioned before as well. You hear different moves called different things. It seems like the sport is becoming more and more and more complicated just for the sake of making it seem specialized, what people are doing.
Yeah.
I think it's frustrating for a lot of people who maybe they have kids who want to see them have the same opportunities they had, but it's becoming a little bit more difficult each and every day.
Yeah.
What problems do you see in that, if any, with the way that hockey's going in that direction?
Well, yeah, again, there are so many choices for skills coaches, skating coaches, strength coaches. So as a parent of a young player, you want to give them the edge. You want to let them achieve their goal, but there's they don't know the difference. You know, most parents, especially in the States, if they hadn't played hockey or grew up with hockey, that person, let's say on the ice, could be teaching them to do a headstand, and the parent would go, oh, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, so they don't know what's good or bad, and so I see that and I get frustrated because it doesn't apply, and then a lot of European people are coming over and showing like European skills, and which is so outdated. Like, but it's like, wow, just see him do that spin up in the air, like, you know what I mean? So people get fooled in all the gimmicks out there now, you know, the parachute and this and that, and they're like, oh, I gotta have that, I gotta have this, but you don't, you know what I mean? So I try to like be honest with parents and say, you don't need to spend that much, or you don't need to
pile on shaped like a hockey stick.
Like, because it all goes back to our childhood. Like, you get out in the driveway and just, you know, or like, like watch the game and just, you know, watch a player. If you're a center, watch that center. And, you know, like Gretzky, didn't he used to draw like where the puck went on the ice? He just used to take a pen and paper and just follow the puck and draw it. And like, you know what I mean? Kids are too busy doing video games or whatever now. Too much screen time for them to even do the extra work. Right?
I think people would be concerned if they saw their kid just tracing a puck along the...
That would be great, wouldn't it? Like,
they would concern people. They'd be, there's something wrong there.
There's something wrong with that kid. No, but that's, you know, new generation.
Now, is the knowledge or the teachings, are they cyclical? Do they go in one direction and flow back the other way? Have you noticed old teachings coming back as rebranded modern teachings in your time?
The fundamentals are still the fundamentals.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, so, for example, I've been doing like coach, like with USA Hockey, developing coaches now, and what they need to know about skating, because a lot of coaches don't know how to teach skating or incorporate it in their practices, right? So I just try to tell them, like, the fundamentals are the same. You still, like, what skating do you need to play the game of hockey? You know, so they always know about the stance and the stride and backwards and crossovers, stops, starts. Like, that's all still the same. You know what I mean? But no, like, some of it has stayed the same, but a lot of it has changed, I think. And that's where we all need, if we're doing this, to stay up with the game today, to stay updated. So even though I'm 100 years old now, I'm current.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that I take pride in that, because I see other people doing whatever the heck they want out there, and people are falling for it, so that gets me upset.
And now you've mentioned a couple of different things in here that you've adjusted, and you wish that you could go back and redo that Paul Coffey video with Ron McLean. And as I mentioned earlier, I watched that as a kid, so I remember Paul Coffey was the gold standard for me when I was raised, and it was, his skates seemingly never came off the ice, yet he was accelerating.
Smooth.
Yeah.
So smooth, right? Because he stayed in that squat, like where, you know how players go up and down. He just stayed at one level and just let his leg. It's all leg skating. Like, I see coaches teaching them to pump kids, their arms as high. Like, you need your arms to play the game. What the heck are you pumping your arms for? You know what I mean? Like, that's another thing. When I started playing hockey, figure skating, you have your arms out. Or like, your upper body's doing something different all the time. It's the same in hockey. Your upper body's playing the game, so it's doing one thing, and your whole lower body's skating the game. So a lot of kids just use too much upper body because they're being taught that. But yeah, he was smooth.
So how have you changed over your career in terms of your coaching style, your base of knowledge, and what you try to teach, and how you try to teach? How have you grown?
I keep the words specific and short, and because kids are more visual, they're more visual now, right? They tune you out as soon as you start talking too long. So I just keep it to the point. I demonstrate everything still, and apply it to the game more. You know, because I learned that from watching Crosby practice. He just takes a piece, his skating game. He'll practice that move in that corner where he does it with a bumper pad to limit his space, so he knows he can turn that tight with that much space. and then he'll take it, you know, he takes a piece of his game where he does that move and goes over and over and over it. So I learned that from watching him, and that's what we kind of do.
Well, okay. Now, you've taken all that and you've accumulated it. Would you want to put it into a new video? Would you want to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I have a box full of projects I've started, videos, books, manuals. I have so much stuff, so I just need someone to help me finish this. I know. I'll come back. You and I can get something together. We can do a new version. Yes. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
That's what we're going to do. Back here.
Well, that'll be fun. Now, another question, and we are nearing the end of this. We're nearing the end of our conversation. It is a very exciting day for you. But I know you've been doing a lot of reflecting, and I want to know, what is your greatest achievement so far in your mind in your career?
Just it hasn't been easy, you know, I hate to say this, but being in a man's world, working in a man's world, basically, and from the beginning, which was like 40 years ago, I guess, to now, but I guess I fit in. And again, I got to credit that to my brother, because I was always a tomboy and hung around him and guys and did guy stuff, but that's been a challenge. So I think just accomplishing and growing and using the tool that my mom and dad gave me and building it along the way in a somewhat difficult business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't touch on that enough, I'd say, actually, now that you mention it, that you did coach women's hockey as well as at Robert Morris.
Yeah.
Now, the evolution in that game from when you're with the Gremlins, not the Gremlins.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, when you're with them, to where you are now as well, with you see leagues consolidating and more focus being on the leagues now. What would you have been like if you were a kid with your passion for the sport? How much would that have meant to you?
Well,
just having the, I guess, example or something to actually aspire to, because for you it was just the NHL.
Yeah, right, right. But you know, even now, like the girls are playing with the boys, right? And they're on board. Like even up in AAA, like even in Pittsburgh, like the girls are still playing with the boys at a high level, and like I would have loved that to be, you know, on a boys team, or just have. Yeah, like it's really developed now. You know what I mean? Especially women's hockey, girls hockey. It's just, it's so normal now, and more like even young boys accept girls playing. Where like that, yeah, it was harder back. But I'm veering off your question.
That's fine. No, I think we got to that there, and there's a couple more here as we're wrapping up, and that was the greatest achievement was overcoming.
Just taking this little thing I had and taking it as far as I can, I guess.
And you mentioned it wasn't easy, but that did lead into the next question, which was the greatest or the most difficult moment of your career.
Well, my first thought was saying, like, I worked it around my kids when they were young and traveling, but it did work out, because it wasn't like a full-time job where I left them every day, so that wasn't a tough time too much, or we could ask them, but tough, just dealing with the non-believers, you know, and like, who's this, like, and, you know, and yeah, because there was a bit of that.
Now, we'll separate greatest from proudest, because I believe they can be different. Was there a separation between your greatest moment and what is maybe your proudest moment?
I think this, honestly, I'm going to start crying now, but like just for my girls, yeah, like.
That's a beautiful thing to be able to say that, yeah. Now, I think that they'll feel the same way when they get to sit here today and watch you, and maybe you'll get your tears out of the way before you actually have to stand up and talk.
Yeah, because I do because I'm pretty quirky and I'm not good at that stuff. And you know, girls, they make fun of their mom, but when it comes down to it, they're my best friends, and I really do want to dedicate this to them.
That's you know what, I almost want to hold off.
This is the proudest moment, honestly. Thanks to you guys.
That's at the Hall of Fame. I'm sure everybody is going to hear that and appreciate that. And now this is going to contribute to this, but we did say we were going to revisit this question,
Okay.
and that was what would the reaction have been for your parents and for your ancestors to see your name, your picture now in a Hall of Fame?
Okay, I got to take a breath because I'm probably going to tear up again, but it's good to get this out of the way now. So I lost my mom when I was 16 to cancer, and it just rocked my whole world. And it was within a very short period. We weren't prepared, and it's when I was still figure skating, and I just, everything stopped, you know. So it took me a few years, even just to get through high school was tough, and finish skating, and then figure out what I was going to do. I was going to go on to college, and I just said, so when I reflect and what you just asked me, it's, I think my mom would be very proud. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry at all. No, I think that's the appropriate reaction actually in this moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have some words with them today when you go visit their graves.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's got to be a very nice thing about coming back.
It is. It is.
Now, one last question, and it's the last question I asked everybody, and
no.
we'll give you, it's not that difficult. Well, it is a little bit difficult for some, but I don't think it's going to be as emotional, I'll say. And it's, what would you like your sports legacy to be in Peterborough?
Oh, wow.
You're going to leave one, it's here, but what would you want it to be?
Whew. I don't know if I'm worthy of a legacy, but legacy, just, she was a good person that tried to give passionately the lessons she learned from being on the ice. Mm-hmm. Is that good?
That is good.
Okay.
I think it's probably true, as you see right beside you here.
Awesome.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, and to the Hall of Fame.
It's going to be a great evening for you as well tonight.
Can't wait.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you again.